attendance here today at our press event, along with Senate Pro Tem Joe Scarnati, House Majority Leader Dave Reed, Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman, and many others who will be talking today at our event. We are going to speak on House Bill 805. Pennsylvania is one of only 6 states that forces school districts to use seniority as the main factor for furlough decisions. And I would only say this: successful businesses, successful organizations, nonprofit and for-profit, do not make decisions in terms of seniority. They make decisions in terms of performance levels. And I know that this bill, House Bill 805, brings an exceptional reform, really, to how we manage school districts all across the state, how we bring education into the 21st century. And I would just say this: all of us here today have one request, really one request. Governor Wolf, please sign House Bill 805, declare it as victory, as really the first and most significant step of this session in protecting quality teachers and putting students first. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Senator Scarnati, the Senate Pro Tem. Thank you.
The beauty of being here speaking is none of us can hear what each other say, so if we repeat ourselves, we apologize. But clearly, through the past year, through the budget process, the House and the Senate leadership was able to put almost $200 million more into education funding in this past budget. And $200 million is a significant number to talk about in order to put back into schools. But none of that money makes it to a classroom. None of those dollars are going there. They're purely going to the schools to help fund a pension crisis that we have in Pennsylvania. And I raise this because even the $200 million isn't enough to meet that increasing obligation each year. So how do we help, and how do we help ensure quality education, the best teachers, and making sure that our students are learning? This bill is so common sense. It's common sense in every aspect of the world of business, every family, and anybody that is in any type of employment. We have to make sure that we put good public policy in place to ensure quality education. 44 other states do this. This isn't novel. This isn't something that absolutely is off the wall. Pennsylvania is breaking new ground. We're clearly doing what 44 other states are doing. And to the governor's argument that this should be at the local level, that's exactly what this does. It puts it at the local level, where superintendents, principals, who know the teachers and who know what's best for that school will make the decisions. So we urge the governor, sign it, live up to commitment of improving public education, and join us on doing this. And it's my pleasure now to introduce the Majority Leader of the Senate, Senator Jake Corman.
Thank you, Joe. Look, this is one of those things that, if you get outside this building and you go out onto the street and you talk to the everyday person who's out there trying to make a living, and you talk about how this issue should play out, whether it should be just seniority or loan, or whether the quality of the individual and the performance of the individual should be factored in, they give you a crazy look like, well, of course. I mean, isn't it done that way already? And you're surprised to find out that it's not. And so to think that we're, as it was mentioned, breaking some great new ground here, every candidate for office, whether it be governor, senator, House, or representatives, when they go out in a debate and they talk about education, they always talk about education funding, but then they always talk about education reform. Always talk about education reform. This is the easy part of reform. I mean, if we can't do this, we can't do any education reform. If you're not for this, I can't imagine what reform you are for. I mean, this is the simplest level to allow the quality of the performance of the employee to be factored in to a discussion if you have to get into an economic situation where you're laying off individuals. So the governor, if you're really for reform, here's your moment. You'll have a pen in your hand soon, and you can decide whether you reform or you're not. You think the status quo is okay. And if you do, advocate for the status quo. But I can tell you this, if he does veto this bill, and we're going to have a budget done very soon, I hope, and the governor's going to want more dollars for education. Well, guess what we're going to want? We're going to want this piece of legislation to go along with any new dollars in education. So I want to congratulate Representative Bloom and Senator Ahmed for bringing this issue forth, for the leader in the House to get it through the House to the Senate. We were thrilled to get it done. And now let me introduce my colleague in the House, Majority Leader Dave Reed.
Thank you very much, Senator Corman, and I too want to congratulate Representative Bloom and Senator Ahmed. They've worked long and hard with their colleagues on this legislation for a number of years. And really, the discussion on education is pretty simple, and our goal on education is pretty simple. We want the best schools with the best teachers to have the resources needed to produce the best graduates. And we are more than willing and have been more than willing to engage in a holistic discussion on what our education system should look like in the year 2016 in Pennsylvania. Now for us, that includes a number of different components. It includes the quantity of the dollars we're spending on education. As Senator Corman mentioned, we just increased basic ed funding by $200 million in this year's budget to the highest amount ever spent by the state on public education before in the history of this Commonwealth. It also includes a discussion on where do those dollars come from. Should we look at logical, common sense school property tax reform as rebalancing our efforts to fund our public schools? It includes a fair distribution formula, which I think we're all very glad to have the new basic ed funding formula in place this year and going forward so that each and every one of our school districts is treated equitably and our students are treated fairly with their education funding. It deals with accountability. And this piece of legislation, ensuring that only the best teachers are in a classroom teaching our most precious resource, our children, is a key component to increasing accountability within the classroom going forward. At the end of the day, the discussion on education does not begin and end just with more money. It's part of the discussion, but the discussion cannot just be about the quantity of the dollars provided. We've also got to focus on the quality of the product produced with those dollars. And this bill moves us significantly forward in that direction to ensure that our taxpayer dollars are invested wisely in the future of this state, our young children. So thank you all very much for attending today, and we would welcome any questions you might have. I think you already signed it, right?
I think Joe already probably has.
Our discussions with the governor, at least from my own vantage point, have been merely encouraging him to sign this piece of legislation, ensuring that we've got the best teachers in the classroom and none of our top quality teachers are furloughed as a result of saving the job for somebody who may be of far less quality. You know, certainly we're getting into the budget negotiations as well over the next couple weeks, and I'm sure, as Senator Corman had said, the governor will want to talk about more money. You know, he's talked a lot about increased accountability over the last year, and we believe that this is a common sense piece of accountability to go with more dollars.
Look, I want.
Is this going to be a hard, fast requirement for a budget meeting?
There's no such thing as that. This is an important piece of legislation. He should sign it and take this issue off the table, sign it, put it into law, and implement it so we can start moving Pennsylvania forward on education reform issues. I asked him to sign it. He indicated he was not going to sign it. But there was no negotiation in that. I just asked him, he said no. Hopefully he's changed his mind. That was 10 days ago. Look, if we get into a budget discussion soon, which we all hope we will, and he doesn't sign this, then we're not going to walk away from this. This is too important to walk away from. So, it will be like every other piece in the budgetary process, negotiation. We do education part of the budget, that this is something that we'll think is very, very important.
But is it a must-have for that for a budget?
You're asking me to put something in cement here. I'm telling you, this will be something we'll be advocating strongly for. We are strongly going to be advocating for this. First, we're advocating for it today. We will continue to advocate for it today. Hopefully the governor will sign it as soon as he gets it. If he does not sign it, then we will be advocating for it in the budget process. Will this be something we think we should, if we're going to put more money into schools, we should have? Absolutely. I'm not going to tell you where all these negotiations end. I'm not going to start these negotiations by drawing lines in the sand before we even get started. Having said that, if you're going to increase money, as Representative Reed laid out very clearly, education is not solely about money. It's important. It's very important. But these issues are just as important. I mean, we have some of the school districts that spend the most money who have the worst performance in the state. So clearly it's not all about money. There are other factors, and this is one of them.
We're going to be signing it today.
They were in session. The House has to sign it back before it goes to the governor.
We'll get it today. We'll sign it today, and I believe the Senate will sign it.
Okay.
This is the first time I've heard that for so many of you guys. This is the third time I understand. Please don't veto it, please pass it. What does that say about this bill? That you guys are stepping out like that?
Look, it's an important piece of legislation. Parents deserve to know that their kids are being taught by the best teachers. We shouldn't be preserving the job of a low-performing teacher and furloughing a high-performing teacher merely because one has more seniority over the other. It's a pretty basic concept that I'm pretty sure almost every single parent across this state would agree with. Look, I can't speak to the governor's justification. We're obviously hopeful that he will reconsider his initial veto threat of this particular bill. We just believe it's common sense to keep the best teachers in the classroom. That's it. I think it would probably do us all well, particularly the administration, to not micromanage local school district decisions. And the fact that we require seniority to be used for any potential cutbacks is micromanaging local school district decisions. And I think the biggest thing that could lead to massive layoffs within our schools across the Commonwealth is not getting a common sense budget done on time that actually gets education funding out in a reasonable time frame, as opposed to waiting 10 months to increase education funding by $200 million.
We haven't had any significant talks with the governor as of yet, so it's not going anywhere at the moment, but I think in the early discussions with the governor, he's in a much more conciliatory mood than he was this time last year, so we'll see where it goes. But just to jump on your question a little bit, when you have common sense legislation, as I said, you go outside this building, streets of Center County or Indiana, Cumberland County, wherever you want to go, and you talk about this, everyone will go, of course. So when you want to oppose common sense legislation, you have to create fear. And so you come up with a scenario, worst case scenario, to provide fear to say, justify you vetoing something that is common sense. School districts have to educate our children. They're not going to have mass layoffs for the sake of having mass layoffs. They're not going to do that. They have a mission. A mission is to educate our children. We're trying to give them more tools to do the best possible job they can. They're not just because they have this legislation, it's like, oh, now we can lay off thousands of teachers. I mean, that is just creating fear in something that goes against common sense.
Thank you all very much.